Hello, Archon in Human Earth, that's the title. But as usual, I'll just ramble. I'll start by saying I'm making a video here now, but this is not our world, so I'm not free. I'm free to make the video, only to present the illusion of freedom, because it is a world that is not controlled by humans. It is controlled, as I've said before, by a God entity. Now, by a God entity, I mean something that is powerful, that has control over every single thing on the earth. And when I say every single thing, I mean every single thing. Every single thing. I don't mean just some things. I don't mean a little. I mean all. Oh, someone just said good morning. Good morning to you. I'm very nervous making these videos, as you can probably tell, and I don't want to make them, and I shouldn't have to make them, and I don't have to make them, but I kind of do because when you realise that, as I've said before, we're spiritual beings in a physical body, our thought creates reality, and we're all connected. Even though I've been a loner most of my life, it's strange to realise that I've been connected to other human beings all along, but unaware of it. Unaware of it. Um, in fact, more connected to nature and animals because humans appeared to be too complicated for me, you know. But anyway, I'll go back to what I was saying. Yes, we have the illusion of freedom because it's not our world. And the God entity that controls it, I got sidetracked by someone listening because I'm so used to just talking to myself, and I suppose I can freely do that when I'm on my own because I think, well, no one's going to think it's good or bad, but it's just putting across what I know now to be true. Now, not everyone will see this as true, and I don't blame you because I wouldn't have seen it as true. In fact, if I was listening to myself right now, even not very long ago, I would not think that anything that I was saying was valid. I might pick up a few things and say, oh, there might be a bit of truth, but I wouldn't pick up the basic concept at all. And I probably wouldn't think I needed to, whereas we do need to because we're living in a total fantasy controlled world that we have no control over at all. Now, the God entity that controls things, okay, that I've said before in the previous video, I've mentioned that it could be particular beings, only from the information I've received. For all I know that there are beings that are much more advanced than us at a technical level that control this planet. Human beings that operate for them that are also much more advanced than us technically and in every single way, because not because they are better than us, far from it, but because they have technological knowledge and advancement from other beings, and even behind the scenes, even if they had not been in contact and controlled by the beings that do control the planet, even if they were just human beings that were behind the scenes. If you want to just look at it that way, even if there were just top human beings, say scientists or, sorry for the plane going overhead, but that is part of the system, part of the set up world. Nothing is random. Every plane that goes over, and we could certainly talk a lot about the planes, but I'm not going to go there. They have noise, vibration, which is bad. Every second coming over, I have them coming over one every 30 to 40 seconds sometimes at a time, not at different times. Obviously, they stop. But anyway, I'm rambling again. I'm losing my track again. I'm so sorry. Look, the being, even if they were just human beings, right, at the top, that would control this world, because we know that we don't control it anyway. We have other people to control it for us. That's a fact. But even if they were just human beings, they would still be much more advanced technically than what we actually are, because they would be developing things, as I've said before, behind the scenes, and they'd probably be at least 50, 60, perhaps 100 years ahead of us anyway. And even now they tell us this by saying, I mentioned 1,000 times Dolly the sheep, and that they can make human beings, because they had, I think it was a few years back now, where they had said that they can create the human genes or whatever. I'd have to look into that again, but I have done all this. I have looked into it, but I don't understand it because I'm not a scientist. But they'd already developed this, but they said we won't be progressing in that, as they've said before. But that's like everything else. Science of course progresses, but also when they give us that information, you have to assume that they've been developing it many years before. So actually they probably would have already known about that many years before they even give us the information. And let's face it, I did not get this information. I get it now because I've looked into it, and yet it was actually put out there years ago. And most people don't get it, because if it's not, even if it's on the news, it would probably be a fleeting bulletin, and even then people have forgotten about it the next day because they're busy with their lives, etc. And they don't think that, they think if something was happening it would be right in front of them. But science and the top people of the world operate behind scenes. They don't operate in front of us, just like most of what goes on. You don't see how you get all your information, or your medical stuff. You don't see how it's developed or where it comes from. If we actually looked into it, we'd probably be surprised. And most of us don't do that. I know I certainly haven't, but I do a bit now. But at any rate, I've gone off the track again. I'm saying we have the illusion of freedom on this world, because if we're not given that illusion of freedom, then we would realise that it is a closed system, which it is. And some people probably think this anyway. Probably if they look around, they say, yeah, we're living in the rat race, we're following this, we're doing that, we have to clock into work at a specific time. It is a system. Even at a realistic level, it's a system. And like I say, science, if you take it that, get back on track, if you take it that even at the top scientists, the top people of the world, they would still rule the world too. They also would be, they would operate, they would be operating the same as the God entity anyway, because, power goes to people's head. Once you get too much power, once you are given too much information, you might not, like if you shown me right now vast technology, it's up to me whether I want to share it with the entire human race, or whether I might just say, hey, I don't want to share it with the entire human race. Most of them are nothings and nobodies. I've got all the money, I've got all this information. I really only care about my own immediate family and the people I know. I'll selectively share my knowledge and information, and that's what I think happens. And I think we all might be tempted to do that if we were in that position, because we might look round at the mess that's been created in the world, despite the fact that we've really created it. In other words, I'm not saying we've created, I'm saying that they've really created it, because if you're the God entity, you can create anything you want. And even if you're people at the top, if you've got advanced technology, you can create situations. You also are manipulating the world. Maybe not at the extra advanced level that the proper God entity is doing it. But even he has to use humans to operate in this domain. So even though he is operating, I believe, at an extremely advanced level, which he must be, because, these interdimensional extraterrestrial beings that were already extremely advanced when they came here originally. As I've said before, my information was 450,000 years ago when they arrived, and humans were primitive then, and even more primitive now, I might add, but because that, when I say primitive, they were primitive because we would look at them now and say they were primitive because that's the image we have been given of primitive man, of the original man. The original man was not primitive at all. The original human being, in my opinion, was a baby that was meant to develop into the most advanced being possible. That's my view. But it was a baby. And when it saw these beings come from outer space, you could say, in a spacecraft, they looked impressive. They were bigger than humans, shall we say. They could create illusions anyway because they had technology. So they could do magic, what would appear magic to the underdeveloped human, not primitive man, but man that was a baby, that was underdeveloped. A baby, when you have a baby, it knows nothing, but it develops into a human being that eventually knows quite a lot. You see the comparison I'm making here? This is how I see it. And so the human being was meant to develop into the highest being. But they were a baby, and these beings landed that had been around much longer and super technologically advanced by thousands and thousands of years. And they arrived and impressed the human beings, the baby human beings, as a baby will be impressed by its adults and even take directions from adults. And that's what happened, was that I think that they saw these beings when they came as gods because they showed them magic, and they then took control of them. They didn't probably have to even do it by force. They might have, but they probably didn't have to, because they would have just impressed the baby human beings to such an extent by coming and arriving and looking so magnificent, type of thing, that the humans would have thought, hey, we better bow down to them. We better accept these as gods. And this is probably what happened. Garden of Eden, similar type thing. Alternative history, a similar type thing. But it's all the same thing, because you have to bear in mind that if you don't know very much and you're just starting out, but you're meant to develop into something, what I'm saying is that the human being was meant to develop past the gods that they worshipped, but instead the god technological beings took over, so that the human being did not develop, and therefore the gods still rule, shall we say. So that's how I see it anyway. Now, some people might differ on that, and look, there is truth to the bit of history, but I sort of see through that and say, well, look, of course, the humans did mingle with the god, the technical beings, but instead of advancing, that compromised them. So then they served the god even more, as we do now. Because if you become compromised, then you will not only, whereas you originally bowed down, that's right, and worshipped, then you will actually serve totally the God entity, just as we serve our world system and our world humans that we put into an elevated position. We serve them because they tell us how we should live, and they put the systems in place that we live in, and they put the world in place that we live in, even much more than what we realise too, because as I've said before, the humans that are on the earth act for the God being that has millions and millions and I've said before, they could be Anunnaki, top group, reptilians with them, reptilian humanoids with them, and then the totally subservient, artificially, technologically controlled, completely totally non-human greys type that are totally controlled by the other two, by artificial intelligence. And they are total artificial intelligence, which artificial intelligence has to be controlled by some other intelligence, shall we say, or other being or whatever. That's how it really works, but I don't think that we fully get that. I didn't get it either, but that's really the truth. Artificial intelligence it doesn't really operate on its own. We think it does. We think it's a separate entity, but it's put here because everything on this earth is controlled by either humans at the top that control everything, and then over that you have the God-like entity that is really an interdimensional extraterrestrial being, you could say. But you can look at it from religious points of view, you can look at it from alternative history point of view. They all are the same thing in the sense that they tell a kind of true history of what happened and what actually exists on this earth. Now, as I've said before, I was just saying now, most people would probably accept that's if you're familiar with this. If you're like me, which was not that long ago, where you'd never heard of any Anunnaki and never heard of any reptilian type beings, which we now talk so much about, or greys. I think most people are familiar with the greys only from the Roswell type thing, but even that was very vague for me. But that type of being, that type of looking being, whereas we have no idea what the others probably look like. Well, at least we probably wouldn't think too much about it. But either way, I think if you're very technologically advanced, and we live in a fake kind of holographic illusion world, for what I can see anyway, that means that they could pretty much take different forms anyway, so they could probably, because if your technology is advanced to the extent to where you can manipulate the kind of holographic world that we live in, because this is what science tells us now, not what I'm saying, which is kind of bizarre, but it really means then if you have advanced technology, you can manipulate the physical world even. Now, what I was saying originally, and what I always start my things with, is human beings are spiritual beings in a technological world, in a physical body. The body is physical and it is technological, but it's organically technological. And now, see, I'm no scientist, but I'm kind of putting my head around that myself and saying, well, look, the body operates like a computer because it's so magnificent, or it should have been. It knows how to write itself. It knows everything. It learns. It not only learns, but it already knows. At its full capacity, it knows everything. Unlike even artificial intelligence, which merely takes from us, mimics us, and then learns from us and advances that way. It's a totally different thing, but it can become impressive and advanced to where it could certainly dominate. But at any rate, I'm rambling again and getting off the track as usual. Now, yeah, ours is more organic, and it was already made perfect, so there was no need to add to it or to update it, whatever, I wouldn't think. But it would probably have naturally, a bit like how the body heals itself from a lot of things, right? We know that that does happen. But because the body is also invaded by alien artificial things now, because we live in a technological world, and it's all technological, the actual domain we live in. We're natural, kind of organic computer-like beings living in a technical computer-like world. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be scientific here, and yet I'm not a scientist, because if I just talk like I really like to, just saying we're spiritual beings in a physical body, our thought creates reality and we're all connected, that sounds more religious and more spiritual and more airy-fairy, but that also is just a fact. So I'm not talking, even though I say spiritual beings, I really mean, to me, that is just as scientific as being religious and stuff, because it's not saying, it's not being religious, it's saying that we're spiritual beings. It's, oh, how can I even explain it? It's like the spirit actually is real. So it's like, yes, a bit like we are here in this physical, computer-like organic body, and we were meant to experience this existence and control this world and this existence, I think, originally. But we were babies, and instead we got intercepted, taken over, you could say, by the God entity that came. And we accepted that. And it's been that way ever since. And so instead of us creating this world naturally, because we as spiritual beings, I think, are much more in contact with the organic natural world, because that's what we are. Everything, but this actual earth now is kind of like two worlds, in the sense that we still have some of the organic natural, we have the earth itself, which is which has the trees and the nature, right, that we're meant to be connected to. But most of the world also is dominated by technology, which is artificial nature. Artificial, when I say artificial nature, I mean artificial in every way. So it's making our world not natural, it's making it artificial. And it even affects the nature and makes even the nature a little bit artificial, I think. And it's certainly made us artificial. But, you know, this is where we have went right away from our natural state of being and our natural way that we should have developed had we developed naturally. In other words, without intervention, without the missing link, the beings coming and interacting with us and changing our DNA, changing our mind, closing off the mind, closing off most of the mind, the subconscious closed off from us and all this sort of thing. And we were meant to have all these things open to where we would expand in a natural way, to where, as I've said before, in my view, we would have advanced beyond belief in that way. Instead, we've now gone into a technical world, and we're advancing that way. And that has been the case from the beginning, but because we don't even have our proper history, we're unaware that history is repeating over and over again. This is what the conclusion I've sort of come to, even though I'm not very good at history. But I'm believing the alternative history. But even if I just believe the history that we are told, the limited history, in other words, you know, like we all know about ancient Egypt. We don't know a real lot about it, not as much as what we should, because most of it's destroyed, that's right. But even the little bit we know kind of vaguely tells us that maybe that civilization was a little bit more advanced technologically, or even at a scientific level, than what we are now, or than what we would have believed. Because we do have so many different ways of looking at that even that civilization, even though I'm limited, as I've said before, in my knowledge of so many things. I have not been studying this for all my years. I've only come into it in the last 2 years, okay? And even then, I spent the first year of that trying to figure out what was going on in the world and my own life and why things were not as I thought they had appeared to be. So, as you can see, I know some things for a truth for myself because I put together my own personal, what I really can see and touch and taste and smell, etc., with other information that comes from other sources that fits. But even at my own limited physical level, I can now see that the human being is not what I thought it was, and that the world is 100% not what I thought it was. And so then I had to look, well, why? What is doing all of this? Who is controlling all of this? Why is it? Why did I only see a small? Well, of course, the reason I only saw a small percentage of the reality or what was really going on was because it wasn't exposed to me. It's like I've said before. If you're walking down, this is gonna sound bizarre, but it's not bizarre because it is the reality anyway. And I'm not. It's a bit like someone who sees an alien, right? You hear of people that have seen them, and there again, I'm not saying that all of those people that see them actually do see aliens, because aliens can be produced holographically. And this whole world, in my view, is a total trick and a total deception. It's a total game. And so even the truth can be thrown at people and used against them. Even when you see something that could be real, you'll only see something if they want you to see it, is what I'm saying. So don't even be deceived that if you did see an alien and actually talk to them, that you just somehow lucky and that you've just stumbled into a paddock where you've seen a flying. No, no, no. That will be because they want you to see it, because it is under the God's domain. It is under these aliens' domain. They control the whole thing. So nothing happens accidentally. So if they like some people to see things because the truth has to be put there. Okay, that's another point. I've said this before. I've rambled on about this. I keep making the same videos because I'm hoping that, I know that people don't watch my videos, right? Because I don't get any views. But sometimes live I get the odd thing. So that's my only way of actually getting anything across much, because from what I can see. And others are putting the same thing across anyway, some in a different way, some might put it a different way, I don't know. I hope that I'm getting the basics of what I think is true across. I hope that, but I do think I'm not very good at it. Now, like I was saying, it is the alien god entity that rules. I say alien because that's a word and it's our concept of something, because I find it hard to use the right words to actually explain what we're talking about, because even when you say alien, people will have something in their head, and it may or may not be a accurate description, or or it may not be actually true what they really look like or what they really are. But that's the only word you can use to describe beings that we're not really in contact with, or at least I'm not and you're not, but some people might be. There probably, no doubt, is some human beings that do make direct contact. And certainly at the top levels where there is more advanced technology, I would say that there has been an exchange of technology or ideas and things in exchange for control of the planet, shall we say. In other words, you know, the beings don't interact with us directly now. They did in the past, I believe, but not now. And so they have to use humans to do their bidding and to act for them. And if you offer, human beings advanced technology, even though probably what they're offered is still probably not as advanced as what the beings would have, because the beings are not going to give over total everything they have to any human, I don't think, because the beings are not, we're not their race. They want their own race to survive. They don't really care about whether the human race survives because it's not their race, you see. And that's a bit like humans see aliens as bad things, and that's because they're conditioned that way, And in this incidence, it will be for you to decide whether this earth is controlled by good or bad aliens. But I'm not saying that all aliens are bad, because it's quite likely that if there are supposedly 3 lots that I've mentioned that actually have dominion over this earth, then you would have to presume that there are many other races out there that might think differently about humans and might not wish to actually take control of the planet and might not want to do that. And you would have to assume that, I think. And from my information, evidently the universe is teeming with different varieties of beings beyond our comprehension, because we think we are the only beings. We are more important than what we realise, I think. And we probably are a little bit the centre of the universe in a funny kind of way. That doesn't mean that we're physically the centre of the universe, although we well could be there again, I don't know. But we do have importance, I think. But even though we have importance, we are not important to ourselves, because we do not know this, and because we also don't know the basics of what I've said before, that we're spiritual beings in a physical body. Our thought creates reality, and we're all connected. So we don't actually even think or know that most of the time. So if we just knew that, that's really all I know. But if you just know that, even though you can't put it into full operation because we're technologically controlled, we're mind controlled, we're physically controlled. And when I say physically controlled, I mean literally. But even if you want to just take it that we're physically controlled in the sense that the world operates by telling humans where to go, what to do, this sort of thing. In other words, if I have to stop at the lights before I can cross the road, I am controlled. I can't just walk across without pressing the lights, and you're going to say to me, well, otherwise you might get knocked over. Well, of course, because that's the world we live in. It's a system. Everything works that way. And it's set up that way so that you will say, well, yes, it is a control system. Yes, I do have to press the lights, but hey, it's better for me to press the lights, because if I don't, I might walk across and get killed by a car, you see. Because that's the rationale behind it. Because we live in a physical, rational world. It's not going to, no one's going to say, look, maybe I don't need the lights, because maybe, and this is just coming to me now, I'm a spiritual being in a physical body, but I've given over this domain to the God entity. My thought creates reality, and we're all connected. Maybe originally I didn't have to have the lights, because I not only, well, and there again, don't take me literally. I don't mean that obviously if you go far enough back, we wouldn't have had cars and traffic, so sure. But I'm saying that and I'm trying to get my own head around it, if thought creates reality and you're a spiritual being, it's quite possible that, you should be able to stop the car with your thinking anyway. So you should really be safe to cross. In other words, you and interacting with the other human beings, you should have even if you have the unnecessary technical automobile. And I say unnecessary because there again I'm gone off, but if we had advanced, we wouldn't have needed automobiles, I don't think, because at a high spiritual level and all the abilities activated, we should with our mind have just been able to move through space and time, shall we say. So that means that we should be able to, a bit like a movie I saw a few years back called Jumper. We should be able to just, is the word teleport? I'm not sure what the words are for these things, but just, yeah, jump from one place to. So what I'm saying is that, and I know it sounds far-fetched, but I'm saying that if we had advanced as spiritual beings, anything would have probably been possible. And this is what I think. And I see glimpses of it. In other words, when you see other human beings, right, that have little talents that you don't have, almost supernatural talents, but they're only so minute, you don't know where it comes from, and you don't think about it. And because we don't know that we are spiritual beings, we think we're just physical beings. We either dismiss that or we think that maybe that person, I don't know what we think. We probably mainly dismiss it or just think that person is using their intelligence or something a bit more to where they might know something. Like like, as I said before, a bit like being psychic. That's really someone that has got that connection to other human beings going a bit better. They haven't lost quite as much of us as the rest of us. But instead, we sort of say, oh, well, maybe that person is just psychologically able to know what that person is thinking because they're picking up on things, but it's still only intellect. They're not actually getting that direct vibe from the person. And that's how we justify saying that, no, this is just a real world. This is just an intellectual world. This is just a physical world. There is no supernatural. There is no... See, by supernatural, I mean it's just that we don't know that what is real is really supernatural or extraterrestrial or it's just what we don't know. It's just that because we don't have access to it, because we have been closed down, and also the world itself closes us down because the technology keeps us in the technology. It keeps us in the TV, on the computer, and that is then feeding us information, but that information is fed to us by the God entity that rules, so that we then stay here because he doesn't want us to leave. He doesn't want us to leave. That might sound ridiculous, but he doesn't want us to leave. He doesn't want us to know beyond this world. He doesn't want us to even know what we can do in this world, because then we would probably, well, a bit like I've said at the beginning, okay? I'm not going to put words into your mouth and I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to say what I think, and you can piece it together however you want, or you can dismiss it even, which no doubt most will. And I would have too, not that long ago. But if we are spiritual beings in a physical body, our thought creates reality and we're all connected. And this is a fake kind of holographic world. Science even tells us it's not really solid. It's like that Matrix movie that I saw not long ago, exactly like that, where things can be manipulated by the mind. the human mind only. The beings that control the world know this. They use that, they have that knowledge, but they have technology as well. And they rely on humans not knowing it and not being able to access it. And most of us can't access it anyway now because we have interbred with the beings, we have been manipulated by the beings, and we were changed. Because this is how I think it happened. As I've said before, we were babies originally at the beginning of time on this earth, at least our beginning of time, as a human being, I mean. We were babies. We were meant to develop into highly advanced spiritual beings that could do what we would now see as supernatural things. But they were just things that were meant to be, and that we would have seen, we would have been able to see, at once we had developed to a certain point, we would have been able to see all the so-called aliens, all the so-called what they were doing. We would understand what they were doing, and we would understand them, and we would know the technology. We would know that the technology was not for us, and we would see the technology as inferior. But because everything, we live in a reverse world, as I said, and everything has been reversed round and controlled by the God entity. So therefore, we don't see this and we don't experience it. If we even experienced a bit of it, see, I think some people that have experienced a bit of it know a bit of this, and this is how they start to then open their thinking up to where they see more and more. But as I've said before, because we live in a kind of holographic, not solid world, but we make it solid with our thinking, and it's hard to explain because I'm not a scientist either, and even scientists don't seem to really explain it or fully understand it either way from what I can gather. But we make it solid with our thinking, but it's not really solid. Nothing is really solid, evidently. And this is weird too for us. You know, it's weird for me. But as human beings, because we are spiritual beings, and spiritual beings operate through vibration and frequency and matter and energy, which is kind of like matter, the solid. So we can, how do I explain it? Because it's not something you can explain, but you do have to accept that everything is frequency, vibration, and energy. And science accepts this. As I said before, they do. And it explains things even for them, even though they don't fully manipulate. I mean, I'm saying that the beings that control the world understand all this, and some humans, maybe that work for them or that interact with them, would probably know this too. But that would depend on how much, because I'm assuming that the God entity would not want to give all his power to any human, not unless that human was even if it was totally under his control. I don't think that he would give all his power to the human, because like I say, if you're a different species, you stick for your own species. Even humans, as I said before, see aliens a certain way. And this is also a manipulation too, because, you know, you can have aliens that have different, just as you can have humans that have a different way of thinking. Aliens also, no doubt, beings, even though we would see them as godlike beings, they also would have a different way of thinking it. So the beings that control this world appear to have the thinking, you know, that they are the God of this world, and which they are because they have been given power and control of it. But they have seen themselves that way, and they think that because, and they are a God that thinks that they can take whatever they want and that it is their right, and particularly if it's not their own species. So, and also they are a God that is not spiritual, so therefore they do not see any harm in killing and in war and in that sort of thing. In fact, that is their They are master warriors, you could probably say. And they have no problem with destruction. Human beings are creator beings. The gods that control the world are destroyer beings in a funny kind of way, because they get humans to create what they want for them, and it's usually negative in the long run, for what I can see. And this is why the world has gone down a fair bit, I think, you know. I'm just going to bring it closer because I'm getting a sore back, because unfortunately, as I've said before, the human body should be able to, in its natural state, heal itself completely. You know, like if you get a cut, right? This is how I see it. If you get a cut, the human body does heal, and it can heal itself. We all know that. But it takes time. I'm saying that I think that if we were at the high spiritual level and all our abilities operating at that level, where, yeah, like to where we weren't compromised and we had developed from that baby into the highest spiritual being, even at a physical level, even this organic computer-like body that we have, it's an organic computer-like body, a natural human-like computer, whereas the world we live in is artificial intelligence, artificial-like computer world. There's a big difference. That is a different frequency to the human being. As I've said before, we're all frequency, vibration, and energy. Oh, I've got it all confused. It's simple in a way, but I don't put it across well. So that is a different frequency. That is a low frequency. The human being is meant to be at a high frequency. At a high frequency, even this organic body thing, right, the body that the spirit comes into, this is our, yeah, like avatar, shall we say? That's the word, isn't it? That means that's our external thing that we come in to operate in this earth domain. This earth domain is a very low frequency. Human beings are meant to be at a high frequency. Spiritual beings are at a high frequency, meant to be. But we're at a low frequency because that is the domain of the world we live in. And that is the domain of the God entity that rules it. He cannot vibrate at a high frequency and does not like high frequency. Humans are only valuable to him while they're kept at a low frequency, because low frequency is energy for the gods, the God. When I say gods, I mean him and his immediate family, his immediate servants, other entities that follow him, etc. Because no God, I don't care, we have this illusion of one single God that controls everything. But in reality, no God, because God is just a word, right? It is really just a word. We have an illusion of God. We have an idea of God that's been pumped into us by the God entity that rules, in a way, because, even a God would be powerless on its own if it only operated just as its own. There is no one man in the sky that controls everything and that can... No, even the God entity that rules has to have his minions. Jesus Christ himself, if you believe he was even the Son of God, he came here and, just use common sense, and he was not allowed to last. If he was really a one God entity, he could have stopped that quite easily. But he couldn't stop it because he was a powerful spiritual human being, the most powerful. But he could not stop being killed because he didn't have enough minions. He had a few, and that was why probably why they got rid of him, because he was accumulating minions. And when you have minions and you are a godlike presence, in other words, you're an advanced being, then you do have power, and then you do have the potential to change the world or take it over. He actually did. I don't think that he wanted to take it over. I think that he just wanted to help humans to take back a domain that had been lost from them, shall we say. That's how I've seen it anyway. He was just showing them that, hey, you need to be like me. You need to get at a higher vibration and become a higher spiritual human being, because that's what you really are. And then you will have no trouble taking back your domain if that's what you want. You don't have to be subservient to the gods unless you choose to. And would you choose to if you knew that you had more power yourself, because you worship the gods because you think they have the power, because you think they are supernatural. You don't think you have any abilities yourself. The gods know you do, and so they keep you as a servant to them, because if you develop your abilities beyond the gods, then you would be a god and you would surpass the god and you would no longer worship the god. That would probably be how it would work in a common sense kind of way, I suppose. Um, and so this is why, you know, this is why the God entity that controls everything doesn't want humans to know what they are or to advance beyond that physical level, because his domain is the physical trap of the body, shall we say. He likes humans to think that they are just physical, because if they knew they were spiritual, then they would advance out the trap and they would advance and go to a higher vibration. And once the human goes to a higher vibration, this world is then incompatible for them, but they will change the world at the higher vibration. Because their thought creates reality, they will then change the world to a higher vibration, and then the God will find the world incompatible and useless for him, because he likes the low vibration and he can't get energy off high vibration. He only gets energy off low vibration. So, so that's putting it kind of basically, if I put it right, I hope I have, but I'm sure I haven't, because I ramble and get all the things muddled up, and for that I'm sorry. But probably the problem with my videos, if there is a problem, and there is a big problem with them, in the sense that I realised that originally when I said I'm going to make a video, it was to talk to people that were exactly like I was only 2 years ago. In other words, that they did not really know or think anything past their little physical life, and they had no reason to, because they thought all was as it appeared to be. And I thought they're the people that anyone who sees a bit more needs to talk to, because there's no point in me talking in a way, as much as, of course, naturally I would love to really talk more to someone who sees a bit more, because you are talking to a brick wall when you're talking. If I'm talking to myself only 2 years ago, I'd be like talking to a brick wall. And yet I didn't see myself as particularly not open-minded. I did see myself as broad-minded. I really did. But being broad-minded in this world also is like, oh, just where you think, oh, it's good to be free and allow this and that. I now realise that even that is a deception. That is not being broad-minded. That is often just going with what you're told. Oh, we should accept this, we should accept that, because that means we're free and broad-minded. I don't think that now either. I would, and there again, I'm not going to use examples, but I would say that being broad-minded really means to where you're, well, being broad-minded really means to where you, I suppose, to where you open your mind to possibilities that you didn't think were real. But who's going to do that? Why would you do it? You would say, well, look, it can't be real, so why would you consider it? And also because you think physically, even if you do sort of open your possibilities and say, oh, well, look, that person talks about aliens. Okay, so I'm going to look into that. But then you will look into it at a physical level, because that's all you can do. So then you'll see you might see information given out, oh, that alien thing was not real, it was a hoax, or it was a fake video, it was this or that. And there again, it may well be, because this world has fake stuff in it and has the truth. And, you know, like if you want to dismiss aliens, if you want to pretend that you're free, all these things which are deceptions, you have to let people think that they can go here, there, and everywhere. They're free. You have to let them think that they can say what they want to say, so they think they're free. But at the same time, you have to dismiss and still monitor all those things. You have to dismiss the truth. If someone speaks the truth and it doesn't fit the construct of this world, then that has to be, you will be allowed to say it, but it will be dismissed, and it will only be said by a few, and they're allowed to say it because that way you have the illusion that you live in a total world that you control, whereas you don't. And even the people that speak it, myself included, for all you know, I could be an alien. I could be an alien putting in a fake human form. I hope that some people have a little bit of intuition left to where they can sense that maybe in my case it's that isn't the case, but I'm saying that it's quite possible, and that it is very hard to discern and to see the truth. It's very hard. I'm fooled all the time myself. The only difference is that I now realise that I've been fooled, so if something appears to be too good, I will sort of say, hey, well, even if it's real or not, I'm not going to buy into it. But you can't really tell. You really can't, because this world has now got, everything is covered. Everything is covered. This is what I have realised. There's very little open door to really get free, and even if you see the truth, it won't make you free. I know they say the truth will set you free. Well, it will free your mind. Okay, it will free your mind, but it will free your mind from what I've experienced. But it will also make you feel then trapped as well still, because you will know that your body is still trapped in this physical world, and that the body will be manipulated and controlled by the actual earth, by the, whether you want to say other human beings that have more power, or whether you want to say the godlike entities that really control the world, because they have much more technology, and because they, you see, even humans at the high level have advanced technology to where they can pretty much see and do everything anyway. And in this world, you can see yourself that everything is controlled and monitored much more now than what it used to be anyway. So we're sort of given an open door to that sort of thing. We've said yes, and human beings, as I said before, are spiritual beings. They have to be given choice. This is the only reason that any truth is allowed at all. This is the only reason that, you know, that I'm speaking even now. It's not that the being God wants me to be talking to anyone, but it's just that it's a free will universe, and that the truth has to be allowed in. The secret is to allow it in, but for people to not see it as truth or to dismiss it. That's how it works, because then we've been given free choice, we've ignored the truth, we haven't seen the truth to be truth, we've seen the opposite. We see the lies to be truth, or the untruth to be truth, shall we say. I don't like to say lies because lies sounds bad, but if something is told to you knowing that it isn't true and knowing that it will set you in a certain direction because you will believe it, then that is a lie, I suppose. That it's a bit like if someone tells you a direct lie, it will change your mind. It will make you think a certain way, and then that thinking might even make you behave a certain way. So that lie is a control mechanism to get you to behave and to think a certain way. If you can control and make a spiritual being think and act a certain way against his spiritual nature, against his spiritual common sense, I would say. If there's such a thing, you see, you can be a spiritual being and still be very logical and have common sense. You can have a spiritual, logical common sense. That's how I tend to think, because I don't always think of myself as a spiritual being. I would use common sense, but the common sense, if I'm operating correctly, will be linked to what is spiritually correct, if you follow me. In other words, I could use examples, but my mind is getting a bit tired, but it's like you will know what is right or wrong, shall we say, even though there again I don't like to go right or wrong, because there again you're playing into the God entity's game when you start thinking good, bad, right, wrong. You know, that's part of the game, to get humans to think that way and then to act that way. That's the problem. It's so complicated, but I see it now quite clearly every day that the minute you're thinking that way, you're already in the game, because this God entity knows our thinking, knows our every move, has watched us for thousands and thousands of years, has manipulated our very genes, has closed down most of our abilities from us, has closed down our subconscious from us. All these things, if they're connected, we would be much more aware of things. We would probably just know everything instantly, and we would see things. I wouldn't be having to stress and strain myself and put myself at a low vibration making the video to say this stuff, because everyone else would just know it. Everyone would just instantly, as they say, wake up. They're, like I was asleep, and all of a sudden they'd say, hey, right, oh, I can see that now. I can see that I was duped, because we've all been duped. I've been duped my whole life. That means, lived a total lie, believed everything, was manipulated right, left and centre in every single way. Thought implants, that's right, where we have thought implants now that we know we have thought implants. We know that when we watch something on the TV, that is a thought going into our head. So that's a thought implant. We know that, but we don't consciously probably think it. We probably think, oh, it just goes in one ear and out the other. It just goes in your mind and out, but it doesn't. It stays in there and it becomes part of your psyche, shall we say. It becomes part of your spiritual being. It's hard to explain, but if we were natural and spiritual beings, we wouldn't allow that to happen. And we could filter things. In other words, the information we get, we would know if it was true or not. We would know if it was really right or wrong. Right or wrong for us, I mean. I don't mean right or wrong in a judgmental way. I mean right or wrong for us as spiritual beings. You see what I'm trying to say? It's like I listen to something from someone else and they tell me, hey, oh, this situation is bad. You better do something about it. Oh, it's going to cause a problem. It's going to ruin our world. That type of thing. And I'm like, oh, right, yeah, you might be right. I better do something. I better go and physically do something, or at least better tell other people, or cause a problem. But if I was a spiritual being, I might filter that more and say, oh, maybe I shouldn't be acting and getting angry about that information. Maybe it's not my business. Maybe I should let it go, because if I get involved, I will be hurting other human beings, even if I think I'm doing good. There again, I've already stopped being a spiritual being the minute I think that if I interact and try to physically control another human being, I've automatically broke with my spirituality, you know. And also, if I'm not um, if I'm not sensible enough, shall I say, to actually acknowledge that I don't have enough information, that I'm ignorant. If I just believe what another person tells me, or what information I've got from any source, then, I'm automatically, sorry about that, I got sidetracked by the vibration of the plane going over. Because you see, that's negative vibration, all that noise. So it automatically took me off my thinking. This is just an example, a very blatant example of how the vibration and the frequency does intercept human beings and affect them. But at any rate, I can see I've gone off track. That's just an example of it, a physical example. And you might say, well, yeah, maybe there's a bit of truth to that, because now her thought's been taken from her. She was on a flow and the thought was taken by the artificial plane, part of the world that is a system, a necessary system, most of us think. But it's a setup. It's a setup. But it's a matrix, it's a setup, it's a video game, it's a virtual reality world that is controlled by the God entity, okay? We create in it, but we're not creating, as I said, for ourselves. We create because we don't have control of our subconscious, because we don't have control of our thinking, we are creating indirectly for the God entity. But anyway, what I went off the track, I was saying that, yes, if we're spiritual beings, and that sounds very religious and sounds very high uppity, doesn't it? Oh, I'm a spiritual human being. And like if I say I'm a spiritual being and you say I don't believe in that, I'm almost upping myself by saying, oh, I'm a spiritual being, you're not. No, it's not really like that at all. We are all spiritual human beings. I never considered myself a spiritual human being at all. Most of my life I thought I was a physical being, and I thought that I maybe had a bit of compassion here, there, and that I was human. But I didn't think I was a spiritual human being at all. I didn't think there was such a thing. I thought spirituality, that's religion, which most people do think that too. I'm saying that, and it's hard to put into words. You either sense it and you know it. And there again, the senses and the instincts are so important. That's something that's been lost. We're not using them like we used to even. We have to have proof of everything. We have to have intellect. Even if we're presented with something, it has to be proven. But on the other hand, as I've said before, we're very easily influenced by people in authority. If they say something, we'll then think that's a fact and we'll act on it. And I'm saying that if you are a spiritual human being, and I think maybe I was a little bit like this even before I sort of said that I was a spiritual human being. I always wasn't one that, I suppose, and I thought that, hey, I'm not normal, everyone else is normal, and I want to be normal. And that is true. But the world has changed. This was true a few years ago, where most people were normal and they had a certain amount of compassion and a little bit of spirit in them. But I think now we've gone so much to the intellect that we need physical evidence of everything. We need more information to back it up. We don't go with the instinct so much. And yes, if someone says something to us, oh yes, you should do this or that, we tend to go with it, particularly if a group of people or someone in authority says it. We don't kind of, at our own personal, individual, spiritual level, stop and say, hey, no, maybe I need more information. When I say that, there again, more information might only prove it, because it's all everything's so false. But maybe at a spiritual level, you just have to say no, even if that information is correct. If I have to do something negative that goes against what I really am as a human being, then I shouldn't do it anyway. That's probably the hard thing. And that's probably where we get tricked. You know, and that's something that maybe I've not been so much. And that's probably why I'm not so well liked in a funny kind of way, because I never had any opinions ever in my life much. I certainly didn't think about the world and all the things like I'm doing now at all. No way. But at a very kind of local, individual level, I didn't tend to get involved and buy into other people's talking about other people. I didn't tend to be someone who would believe the so-called gossip or the headlines or the much of what was going on. I did tend to just, at a very basic individual level, just still do what I thought was maybe right just for myself. But if another person thought, like, I'll use an example, right? I'll use an example, it just comes to me now. Many years ago, I used to feed the birds and the pigeons, right? Just anywhere. You know, like I might take some seed with me, and if I was walking down a street, I would just leave a bit of seed under a tree, on the footpath or something, for the pigeons or the birds, any birds, to come along and eat. And I remember it was these ladies come along to me, quite nice ladies really, come along and said, "Oh, you shouldn't be dropping the seed on the street, that's very bad. That'll bring all the rats around to all our places," and things like that. And they were quite adamant about it, and I didn't say anything to them at the time, even though a few minutes later I thought, well, I should have said, "Hey, look, the rats won't get the seed because the rats are already here anyway if they are here. But either way, the birds eat all the seed." So, you know, I knew their argument didn't hold water anyway, but either way, at my own personal spiritual level, to be quite frank, I thought it wasn't logical anyway, because like I say, if there's rats there, they're already there. You're not going to bring them from overseas by dropping a few bits of bird seed. But even if that was the case, which it couldn't be, but even if it was, my mind was still like, I want those birds to have the seed. I care about the birds. I don't care about the rats. If a rat runs through, maybe a cat will get it. Maybe even the rat is life. It has some purpose on this world anyway. So no, I didn't want to go along with that, and I did keep leaving the seed, even though I was careful and actually found it not as pleasant just throwing the seed around, because I thought, who could object to someone feeding a few pigeons? Like, I would think everyone should do that, and I thought that's a nice thing to do, and the birds are beautiful, etc. But you know, that's right, some people can even make a negative, and I didn't want to upset those people either. I didn't want them to feel upset, worried about imaginary rats, even though I did think that it was in their imagination. But I didn't want them to be upset. But it did ruin my little business of throwing the seed around a little bit too, because I'm half looking around thinking, oh, I hope that there's no ladies or other people objecting and being angry. But you see, that's just an example. It might seem a bit pathetical to you, but at the time and it's just an example of where I suppose that's what I'm saying, is that even when I wasn't a spiritual human being, there was a part of me that still said, well, look, in my own mind and my own heart, I have a view of what I think is right. Now, I might even be wrong sometimes. And yes, sometimes when you're doing something good, it can have adverse effects. That is true, because we do live in a funny world. And the world is designed that way, to where if you do good, there will be an adverse effect or criticism or something. It is designed that way because that keeps the low vibration. whereas everyone should be happy. That's right. Just going around, yeah, doing what they want to do freely, without worry and with a high vibration. And I hope that in using that example, some people haven't turned off and said, hey, she likes bringing rats around. You see what I'm saying? But no, I do not think that, and I do not want people to be unhappy, but I'm saying that we are all often misguided. We have all these false things put into us. Even our fear of natural things sometimes. Like, I don't particularly like, I get terrified if I see a particular rodent, okay? But I actually acknowledge that my fear is false, but I still get it. Just like I used to be frightened even of snakes and dogs and things. But I actually know that these are just other life forms and are actually no different to the birds that I like or the other animals. Really aren't in a way. But they've been, maligned by a past history, a fake past history of plague and all these sorts of things, which doesn't exist now anyway. And if it did exist, it would not be caused, even if it was brought in by the rats, they are given it by other forces. Okay? I could go airy-fairy and say dark and light forces, but it's not dark and light forces, it's just certain entities and human beings. They're just different life forms that are in opposition to one another and sometimes are coexisting in a continual vibrational battle, you could say. Because human beings are spiritual beings in a physical body. Their thought creates reality. It is manipulated by the environment, the thought, by the environment, by the God entity, by the technology, by everything that is around us. And by bad vibration because they put bad, negative scenarios around us, shall we say. When I walk out my door, I'm going to have a negative scenario. I should have a positive one because my thought combined with others should create reality to where it's positive. But we're not living in a free, natural human world. We coexist with Archons. That's the collective term for the beings that rule. Even if those beings had a battle right now with some other beings and the other beings took over, I would have to assume that, in other words, I'm saying Anunnaki with a god ruler, which he does have a name, but I'm not going to go there at the moment. I didn't even want to mention the Anunnaki or reptilian type humanoids or the greys or these groups at all, because I just wanted to say, I've said in my other past videos, just an entity, a god entity that rules, that has minions. He has to have minions because he's not powerful enough just on his own to take over this whole world, especially considering that this world was ruled really by spiritual beings, which is kind of, in fact, he's a remarkable genius at his level to have accomplished that, because to take over beings that should have been at a huge high level and to suppress and keep them down at a very low vibrational, low level in every single way is a remarkable feat. It takes a genius, but a twisted genius in a way, because it's a duality mind. Duality mind is a twisted mind. Once you start to think too much of right, wrong, good and bad and all that, and that is the world we live in. That is the duality world that this God has set up and rules over. Once you start to think that way too much, you're playing the game and you're already losing your spirituality, because your mind is being taken over by that very concept of good and bad, of right and wrong. And you've got the rules then. You're starting to be directed along certain paths just by that very thinking, which is interesting. The minute you say something is good or bad, something is right or wrong, even though there is good and bad and right and wrong in a funny kind of way, that's because this world has been taken over by it all. Originally, if human beings were spiritual beings and their thought creates reality, and they're all connected, there wouldn't have been good and bad so much. There wouldn't have been right and wrong so much. And they, in their concept, they wouldn't be thinking about it all the time. And they wouldn't have to, because they would have a much more, I would think they would have a world that they controlled, but it would be peaceful and they would be in harmony, because as they're all connected and we're all connected, that really means that we're really one. And one cannot fight one. You can't fight what is a part of yourself. You wouldn't do that. That's what we do now, though. We even fight our own families, which are part of us in a funny kind of way, even at the physical, fake level that we've been indoctrinated into. I've seen that all my life. I fought with my families, thought they were in the wrong, thought they were doing this and that. And they were too, because they were controlled by the God entity. So they were infected with that negative parasitic way of thinking. The parasites come into their mind, they put the negative thoughts, they're into the control and the domination, that type of thing. So then they create you as a spiritual free being feeling very compromised, very restricted, and then angry. And so then you hit out and you say, hey, you're ruining my life, you're restricting my life. So then you're in that circle, you're at low vibration, you're playing the game, you're fighting them. But it's hard, because if they are doing that and the world around you is doing that, it is hard not to enter into that game. The God has got it down to a fine heart, as they say. No, he's really got it down 100% to where you can't really, it's hard to actually get your freedom and to actually be calm enough to raise your vibration a bit, even, because everything is set up to keep the vibration low. You can't help but play the game almost. This is the problem. That's why the God certainly doesn't like it when a Jesus type comes along, assuming he was real, where that person has managed to get to a high vibration. Because I think once you get to a high vibration, the physical world does not affect you very much. So even if you've got chaos going on around you, even if people hate you and are fighting you, you have gone into yourself to where you will not play that game. But that's why I say these few people that have got to this point, that's why they are a bit revered and even been used in the religion, because human beings, if they see it, they know that it is special. But what they don't know is that's how they're meant to be too. They then start saying, oh, well, Jesus was a God, this is a God. But in reality, it's meant to be that everyone is meant to raise their vibration. None of us, we're all spiritual human beings. We're all human. If you're a human being, a proper human being, then you are meant to be spiritual, because that's why you're given the feelings and the emotions and the compassion and all these things. If you were not, you would be like the God, a technical being that has less feelings, that only tends to want to kind of have, I'm trying not to use hard words, but really, if you are the technical being, then you only want to operate things. You want to maneuver things. You want to control things. You want to direct things. You want to have a setup. That's how technology tends to work. It's a setup. It's an artificial mind and physical thing. It's not natural, it's not real, it's not spiritual. It goes against everything that a human being originally was and is meant to be. But we live in that domain, and this is the problem. Well, it's a problem if you want to advance that way and if you want to be what you really are. I mean, it's kind of strange that humans now think it's acceptable and real and natural to be with a computer. They actually think that's normal. This is how far we have gone, down or up, depending on which way you want to look at it. We now think that the computer, the technology, that is the God that is better than us. And we think that it's acceptable and normal to be interacting with it and to be letting it infiltrate into our spiritual being, into our thoughts, into our activities in every way, and into our whole planet. And it's a different vibration to us, and we think it's like it would be like me, and this is exactly what it is, and it just come to me now. It'd be like me eating a tub of plastic as opposed to organic, healthy food, and saying it's okay for me to incorporate that into my body, because that's what we're doing. We're incorporating the artificial into our body every day, into our mind every day, and we think that's acceptable. And we don't even know we're doing it most of the time. I would think, I know I wasn't aware. I didn't realise that half of what I was even putting in my mouth was not natural like I assumed it was. And some people might say, oh, well, that's okay. And it will change your body. But to my way of thinking, it will change it and take it further away from its natural, spiritual, authentic state. Now, I've already said the human body is a computer, but a natural computer, an organic computer, much more advanced than any technological computer. But we are being informed that it's better because it can, because it can grow. You can grow something technically and artificially, and it will overtake you, but it won't be you. You'll be overtaken and you'll be dead, literally. Particularly if you incorporate, make your already prison body into even more of a prison. You might say, oh, well, it will extend your life a bit, and it might, but it will be more of a prison. It will just be where you're here as a spiritual being stuck in the physical body, and you'll be trapped in it, because we're not really the physical body anyway. And also, I think the main point that I've tried to make is that if originally we were meant to be natural spiritual beings that could have done all the things that technology can do and much more, but did them in a natural, instant, authentic, constructive, creative way that is naturally us. This is what they tell us technology can do. That's because technology right now is mimicking what I say. Everything I say right now will go to a supercomputer that will take that and use that to tell other human beings, hey, technology is creative, technology is spiritual, technology is this and that. It is not. It is alien, and it is literally the technology of the God alien that rules this world. And that's, I'm sure I could say more, but I wish I had it written out better. I was going to start this video actually, and maybe I'll keep going, but time is running out. The sun has long gone down. I'm way behind. But I was going to say that, and I will go on to this in another video maybe, but I will just finish up by saying, because I'm on that roll and I get so upset about it. Look, this world is ruled by a God entity, right, that is not human and is not spiritual, is technological, okay? That's putting it basically. You can put names on him and you can put names on the minions, different types of species, they're all technological. All the species that rule this world are technological in nature. None of them are spiritual, okay? Human beings are meant to be spiritual. This is my view. Okay. And I think most people would probably secretly agree with it. They know they're human, they know they have feelings, they know they have emotions, and and they know that something has been taken from them, and they feel empty. Now, this will also be used to trick them because technology mimics every human emotion and feeling and thought and spirituality because they know they have to do this to keep us playing the game, okay? It's tricky. It's so tricky and such a mastermind rules it all that it's words cannot describe it really. It's not unbelievable, it's beyond belief, it's beyond everything. And especially as we have not even been given the basic information that there are even possibility of other beings. So, and even that our own world is not what we think it is, and even that our humans that rule this planet, and even our humans that walk amongst us, are not all the same. That's another thing. That was what I was originally going to talk about, even though I have not wanted to, because it's tricky. And even I find it hard to comprehend and to talk about it without actually seeing it. Let's just say that, have a look at the movie They Live. There's a movie made in the 70s called They Live. And the fella in it is just like me and you, and he walks around and he's not well off or anything, but he puts on the sunglasses. He finds these sunglasses in the boxes of sunglasses, and puts them on. And when he puts them on, he sees that every sign around him really says something different to what it does when he doesn't have them on. In other words, I would see the sign as an advertisement. He puts the glasses on and it's telling him to do something else. He looks around at other human beings and sees that some of them are different to others, shall we say, that they are not as human as himself and some others. And he wonders what is going on. And that's why I recommend seeing the movie. It's supposed to be science fiction, although it says it's a documentary at the start. There again, the duality, the deception of the world. It tells you it's a documentary, but when you watch it, when I first watched it, I'm like, this is the most ridiculous, silly movie. And it's poor science fiction. But I don't think that now. But, this is it, because it looks ridiculous. But you see, the movie was showing you that not all human beings, even on this planet, are the same. And now we know that there are different personality types, and even that makes some people more human and less human than others. Because if you're more of a cold person and you're very selfish and you don't really care about anything except your own ends, as a lot of the top people are, and even scientists can be like that because they might start out saying, oh, I'm going to do this for humanity. But before you know very long, they get so obsessed with their work that only their work becomes the obsession. They lost sight of where their work, if their work is really to benefit humanity. Because if you develop things, even if they're advanced, like the beings have done, where you advance your technology, but that technology actually causes more destruction and actually is not a benefit to a spiritual being anyway, then you're a poor scientist. In fact, you shouldn't even be a scientist. In fact, science should probably not exist anyway, I don't think. Personally, I don't think science should exist. It's not necessary. Not if human beings evolve to their highest level. Because at their highest level, they know how to cure disease. They know how to keep their body healthy. They can control things. They can control their reality. So they don't need science. They have that ability. Science is there to control reality, to show you what makes up things so that you can manipulate it and supposedly make things better, make better health, make a better world, go out there and see what's going on. But if as a spiritual being, you could go from one place to another, if you can heal your own body, if your awareness shows you the truth everywhere, to where you just automatically see how things work, there's no need of science. But that's incomprehensible to me and to you, no doubt, because until you access that, I believe it to be true. I think that some people access a little, and that is enough to show me that because 98% of our DNA is closed down, and because most of our mind is shut off from us, I have no reason to dispute that if all those things were operational, that those people that have the little abilities, everything would be much more. And then in light of the knowledge that I now, the information that I have, knowing about the beings, knowing about the true history of the world, knowing and seeing how it all is unfolding and how it actually operates, and what a video game, fake, controlled, completely artificial world that we live in every way, that is not controlled by us in any way as human beings, I do not dispute that this is the truth. And that's the only reason that I think all of that and believe it. Even low, I can't put it into practice, which makes me distressed, and then I get low vibration, you see. This is the problem. To know something but not to be able to access it, and to know that it was a possibility and could perhaps still be a possibility if, like in the movie They Lived, we get rid of the things that are interfering with the vibration. Technology keeps human vibration low, especially the excessive amount we have now that covers the whole globe. It was always limiting in the sense that we shouldn't have needed it, but now it actually affects our body, our mind, and leaves us totally powerless. And even our minds are taken over by it. We're just downloading the thoughts that are put into us one way or another. And if you also realise that these beings, I've heard that even the greys, the artificially intelligent controlled beings, even though they are artificially controlled beings, the information I've given, and very advanced, they do have the ability to read the minds technologically. They have the ability to see inside our thinking, and therefore to infiltrate if our vibration is low, to actually come in and put thoughts in there. Only if the vibration is low. See, this is the trick. See, the beings that control this world know that humans operate under vibration and frequency. So they know that if they keep it low, they can come in and put thoughts, any thoughts they want, into our head. They control us as it is, physically, by this physical world and by the events and by the information they give us. But they also actually can come and intercede into your very thinking. This is even without the technology that we call the internet, which is also a vessel which they can come and affect us, obviously. The vibration of the internet alone affects our frequency. It's all over the planet. It affects nature too. It affects anything that is living, organic. Technology is a different vibration to what is organic. This is very basic, you know, but they can come in because only if you're at a low vibration. This is why some people are clearer thinking than others. You saw me get sidetracked. This is why I find it hard to keep my flow, because I'm continually being bombarded with the physical around me, the noise, the vibration, the frequency, just of the mobile that I'm using to make this thing is a frequency that is working against my natural frequency and working against my thinking. So that's why I find it hard to keep the flow. And because my vibration is low, the beings can come, the greys, the aliens that have that technical ability, a psychic technical ability, I can't explain it, at a physical level because I don't understand it. But they can come in and put a thought into your head only if your vibration is low. This is because human beings are spiritual beings. See, people who are targeted know this because they know they are continually being targeted with negative activity, physically and mentally in every way, to keep their vibration low, because some individuals are on the verge of raising their vibration. And the beings that control this world know this, so they have to keep some human beings' vibration down low. Because if they are left on their own without interference, shall we say, they will raise their vibration. And then once they raise their vibration to a certain level, the greys and the other beings will not be able to come in and put negative thoughts into their head. This is only possible, and they know this. It's a science in a way, even though it sounds airy-fairy. It's actually a physical science. They know that vibration, frequency, and energy makes up the universe, and it does. This is what even scientists tell us. I just picked this up, and I'm not a scientist. I just picked it up because I'm just become a bit more aware, because I've had to, because I've seen things and I'm like, hey, there's something wrong. So I've had to look for a bit of truth. Now, like I say, if you do, that's why they have to keep the vibration low, because then they can lose the power over you. You can't get rid of the internet. You can't get rid of those negative frequencies. They're all low frequencies. You can't get rid of if there's disruptive activity around you, because those other human beings are controlled by the God and by the greys and by all the negative frequency, etc. We all are. So you can't control that. But if you were able to raise the vibration, you would be able to stop the entities from putting direct negative thoughts into your head, which will influence you to make wrong decisions. Decisions that will go against your natural spiritual being, because a natural spiritual being wants to make decisions that will keep their vibration high and keep themselves happy. But the negative entities will try to put thoughts in that will, at the time, seem like what is convenient or what is expedient, shall we say, to where they'll put fear into you. They'll say, you better make this wrong decision now, even though you might think, yeah, it is a bit wrong, but hey, I'll be safe if I do that, because they put fear into you. But then for the rest of your life, you'll be at a low vibration and negative because you've made the wrong decision. Because fear also is used very much against us humans. I know it's been used against me most of my life, to where even if you know something is wrong or not a good decision for you, or even a good decision for those around you, if you've got fear put into you, the fear will dominate, and therefore you will make the wrong decision. And this is a fear-filled world. It's very full of fear. Fear is something that the entities particularly feed off, because it's a negative energy and it keeps their planet at the low frequency that they need to keep control of it, to keep the system going, to keep their world as they have it now going. They don't want, and humans are frightened of losing it too, because we're dependent now on the system. See, what I'm saying is, yeah, I'm dependent on the system too. So that's a fear thing. So even though you say, hey, I want to really get rid of all this, I want to go back to nature, I want to go back to the beginning and start again, chuck all this away. You're like, oh, but how can I live then? I haven't got no money. I can't grow my own food. I can't get my own water, my own electricity. It should all be free, and I should be able to create all these things with my thinking, and I should be combined with other human beings. And thought creates reality, and we're all connected, and I should be able to do all these things. But that isn't the reality, because the world has been taken over. So I'm like, oh, I'll have no money. I won't have food or water or this or that. So the fear. So we're really trapped. We're trapped, as I've said before. We're trapped because the world around us is a delusion. Most people that we see are different to what we think. There are different entities ruling the world. There are different entities on the world. We're trapped in a prison, a trap, a prison, a jail, a confinement of our planet, of this actual world, is confined and controlled. Our mind is confined and controlled, and our body is also confined and controlled and limited. So we've gone from the potential, I think, originally to be high spiritual beings that could have controlled everything and created anything and everything we want and been free and had no worries about all the material things that we now worry about and that we think we need for our survival, because we're so engrossed in the body. Because the body was just meant to be something that we could operate to create all the goodies, all the things that we would need, and to be in connection with one another. And instead, we've got the technology doing all this stuff for us, which is not us and is not controlled by us. It's not ours. It's the God entities and the forces, and they are negative forces. They are not positive. They are not spiritual. And I'll go on about the different types of humans, I think, on another thing, because I'm quite tired. And I hope I've put it coherent. I always say that, but I don't think I do, because I know that I've got sidetracked. And, I think really with videos, maybe the secret is to say one subject and stick on it, but I never seem to do that. But and I've got to imagine that I'm talking to myself, otherwise I get nervous, because I'm thinking, hey, people are not, if anyone is listening, they're not going to get it. And the people that get it, the trouble is that the people that do get it are the people that are either under bombardment, like some of us, or they start to think that the world is not theirs, or they're already got knowledge of different history and stuff, and they believe a lot of that stuff, and therefore they find this quite acceptable and normal. But the trouble is the majority rules in the world, and it's the majority that you have to get to see that everything is false and that they're living in a delusion, and that the majority doesn't want to see that, because I know myself, it's shattering, because a lot of people, their identity is their body, the way they look, their name, what that is their identity. They don't see themselves as spiritual beings. And even I don't fully, even though I believe this to be true, but we're so engrossed in this fake world. And that's the idea, to keep us engrossed in it, to keep us limited, to keep us thinking that we're just a body that lives and dies, and that even the body is to be looked upon badly because it's in such poor condition. And that is because of the external forces, because, as I've said before, even the body, I think, if I get a wound, it heals. We know the body does heal itself, but it heals slowly. Whereas if you were at a high vibrational level, I'm of the mind that the wound would heal very quick. Very quick. But that would be science fiction to most people, and to me too. But I'm guessing this. I'm assuming this, because I'm assuming that the human being at the high spiritual level, and as it was meant to develop, like I say, we're a baby originally, and we got intercepted by the technological beings from out there. If there had not been that intervention, that missing link, most humans would have developed and be at a very high level, and the world they live in would be totally different to what it is. It would be anything they had created, what they wanted. And they would have created in harmony with one another, because they would have been creating as a one, really. Because, like, if I'm one person, but I'm all connected to everyone else, well, that's really almost like one in a way. So therefore, I would have to be in harmony with my other parts. Unless something really bad happened, like interception by technical beings that splits my mind up and confuses me and tricks me into thinking that parts of me are alien. In other words, if I think this finger is not part of me, it's alien, I'm not going to treat that finger too well, or I'm going to disregard it at the least. But it's a part of me, really. But that's how it really is. If you don't think that you're connected to other human beings, but you really are, then you're hurting yourself every time, as I've said, you hurt them, because that's how it really is. But we don't know that. We don't see it, and we can't feel it anymore. Even I can't. And I believe it to be a truth, though. I believe it to be a logical, factual, scientific almost proof, even though I disdain those things, because they are not what we're meant to be. We shouldn't have to look for the proof. We shouldn't have to just see it. We should feel it and know it, and it should be there, because they're our gifts. They're what we really are, and they are what shows us the truth. Science doesn't show us the truth, and even if it does show us the truth, it shows us only a little, and it takes a long, long time, and it's just like going around the mulberry bush, shall we say. It'll never get to where we know everything. It can't. And it changes all the time too, so figure that out for yourself. Like with everything that's going on in this world, like it's just all what the God wants you to know, what He wants you to think about the world. He doesn't want you to see through the veil. If you raised your vibration, if we all did, we'd all see through the veil, and we'd see the truth. We wouldn't have to analyse it or take it to a laboratory or ask a scientist or ask anyone. We just know it. Each individual would know it. That's how it's meant to be. And if it was that way, every problem would be solved in an instant probably. But also, if you're at a high vibration, you don't worry anyway. So even if you saw the world and say, hey, it's a disaster, we've got a bit to clean up, you wouldn't care. Because you'd just be at a high vibration, you'd know that you could clean it up. And you'd know that you had other possibilities, all sorts of potentials anyway. And even the God that rules this world, He can change things for the better if He wanted to in the blink of an eye too, because He has the technology to do so. But He doesn't want to, because that's not His domain, that's not how He operates, that's not how He thinks. He's a low vibrational technical being. Humans are meant to be high vibrational spiritual beings, you see. He creates with technology and uses technology to control things. Humans are meant to create with their thinking, and they can control that way. But they don't do that because they're not aware of that, and they don't have access to it, and they're deceived into thinking that the world is all physical and technical. So, that's the deception and yes, it's a duality world of right, wrong, black, white, left, right, good, bad, but it's a duality in the sense that it's two worlds, and they're worlds of deception. We're living in a total fake, artificial world of total illusion, deception. We don't know what we are, what's going on. And even when we do, we're like, oh, if it's just a few that realise it, and then we're still at low vibration, we're like, what can we do about it? I'm hoping that maybe I'm talking to someone out there, even if it's just one person, that has the potential to raise their vibration a bit higher. Maybe if my information just is able to help you to raise that vibration just a bit higher, then you can change the world. Because I'm not having much of a good go at it, I can tell you. I'm buying into and being bombarded and letting it keep me low. If this had not happened, but there, like I say, the God knows everyone and knows everything. So He knows if you're going to raise your vibration. So He will hit you hard. He will deliberately hit you hard. And He knows all your weaknesses. He knows what you think. He knows what you're going to do. He knows how you react. So he can hit you at every and any level he chooses. And he will hit you hard if he thinks you're going to raise the vibration just a little bit. Because, as ridiculous as it sounds, some human beings can really send the vibration to quite a few people instantaneous once they raise that vibration. And once that happens, they will see, those other human beings will see what the one that's transmitting it is seeing. And therefore, they will raise their vibration and so on. And once that happens, this world would change. Now, I was going to stop, but it's so important. And I hope everyone hasn't fell asleep, which you probably have. I'm trying to keep the thought, look, if that happened, then the world has the potential to turn around and change quite dramatically, because everything is frequency and vibration and energy. So then the world becomes at a higher frequency too, because strangely enough, from my information, even nature operates at a frequency, and we are connected to nature. Technology we have no control over. Nature and this earth we have control over just with our vibration. So we can make that better too. But there are still obstacles too. This is interesting, and this just occurred to me now. Now, I'm not sure 100. I know that if you have one human being sending vibration and thoughts to another, and that if that vibration is a bit higher, and we're all very much at low now, and technology is dominating everything. So this puts complications into things. We're not like back when Jesus even walked around, when most human beings had no technology going through the air. He only had to get his vibration high and able to transmit it to other human beings. And they were open to truth then too, so even what someone spoke would have been perceived as truth if it was truth. Now we're so befuddled, I just made up that word, by technology, and confused by all the information and the vibration that goes through the air, the information we receive from the technological. We're so befuddled, confused, bewildered, in chaos in our mind even by it, that we wouldn't know the truth if it was thrown right in front of us, because we just got too much information. Whereas back then, their minds were more simple, but more clearer. You know, too much information can be too much information. It's no good getting a lot of information if there's only a bit of truth amongst it. You won't find that truth. You won't see it. You'll be looking for a needle in a haystack, as I've said before. That was how I was. And even now it's still hard, because and also you do want to think logically, because that's how you've been conditioned. You don't want to sort of have to rely on your instinct and say, hey, oh, I can see that I got information there, but instinct tells me that what they say isn't true is really right. You're going to say, oh, I think I better delve into that and look for a bit more proof, though. You're not going to go with your instinct, even though your instinct will invariably be right. Because you don't trust that, because you've never used it, and you're not told that it is your main asset in this world that we live in now. Not to believe what people tell you, not to believe what's around you, but to just say, hey, my instinct tells me something's wrong. My instinct tells me something different. They say I should do this. My instinct tells me maybe I should do that, but I better go with them because they're telling me this, and they must be right, and they're my friends, and they're the information, and they're the gods, you know, they're the authority, they're this and that. It's like that, and this is the problem. And I've lost my train of thought again because I go off onto tangents. I have too much almost information now in the sense that because I'm waking up to what things are, that's like having your whole history rewritten. And so you're like, oh, it just comes to you and you're like, oh, I've got to change my thinking now. That what I thought was right is now wrong. You know, what I thought was good is now bad. What I thought was truth is now lies. So it's all like that. And we do live in a reverse world. That's what I've very much seen. And this is the workings of the God entity. He thinks that way. He likes to operate that way. And it's a game to him. So he enjoys the game. And he feeds off the negativity of the game. It's like if you're playing a video game and you're in a battle, you feed off the victory, the domination, the actual game itself, the strategy. It's a strategy. Spiritual beings are not really like that, I don't think. I don't think we're beings that actually are meant to be strategizing and intellectualizing everything and planning everything and figuring out what we can get out of this. That's not really how we were meant to be. And of course, we wouldn't have had to have been that way either. See, a lot of people do that now because they have to. They might, even if they don't want to, they have to operate in this real physical world to get what they want. So they have to always be thinking about material things. They have to always be thinking about how to get money and how to. This is the trap of the world. This is the problem. But what I was trying to say, yeah, it's come back to me now, was that the problem with if, you know, they try to stop the human being from raising the vibration, right? And they do. They successfully do it most of the time. It takes a big human being to walk around on this earth with bombs going off around them, literally and mentally, whichever way you look at it. That's just me putting it that way. In some areas of the world, that is physically a case. But even if you're not being hit, they use different warfare now anyway. Like most of the warfare that goes on by the God is technological warfare. So it's not, you don't know you're in a battle these days. Whereas in the past, you went to war, and even if you were in that war under misapprehension and misguided beliefs, and you were tricked by deception to fight that war, to go against your spiritual nature and to kill a fellow spiritual being, you were still aware that you were in a war. And a lot of people, when they come back, they were traumatized because they knew that they didn't like what they were doing, even though they believed they were doing it because they had been told it was the right thing to do. But today's warfare is all technology and it's invisible. So we don't see it, you know, so we're being guided that way. And we're not, we don't realise we're in a battle with our spiritual self and with other human beings too, because they're on the side of the technology, most of them. You know, so that's kind of funny too. Because if I'm saying we're natural, spiritual human beings, there are plenty of human beings who think that technology will save their lives and will extend their lives and will give them a wonderful, safe future. Well, I've said before, it will be a safe future. They'll be safe from, they could be safe from death for a while. And they could be safe from, actually, I'm finding it very hard to say what they're really safe from because I don't think they're safe from anything really myself, but because I believe that once you give your mind and your body and your thinking and your very essence and your feelings and thoughts over to technology, that in itself is death. But until the final takeover of technology of you, you probably wouldn't even be aware of it, because even now, just using a mobile, like I'm doing now to make this video, I'm being taken over. Now, that's just the truth. So, I'm taken over, I'm not free, I'm controlled, and I'm being manipulated, even though I think that I'm trying to unmanipulate other people by making the video. No. And, this is the trap and the trick of it too, and I've got complicated, I know, and even distressing myself by complicating myself because I want to be positive, obviously, and give people, anyone who's listening, some motivation to raise the vibration. Now, what I'm saying is that some people might be able to do that, but they will have to totally shut out the real world, I think. Now, that is very hard to do. And if you're in physical pain, how do you shut out the physical pain? These abilities have been lost to most people, and they've been lost to me, but I believe that humans should be able to even do that. A bit like I saw an example on a video, like where people can walk over hot coals and not be burned and not feel any pain. Now, this does happen. And instead of most humans saying, hey, if that person can do it, I should be able to do it too. And you have to say, why can they do it? That's because they've raised their vibration and their mind has mastered over their physical body. They know that they're a spiritual being and that their thought creates reality, and what they think determines what is the real thing. In other words, yes, if you think that you're invincible and can't be hurt, then you will be invincible and won't be hurt. But most people are like, oh, how can I not be hurt if that person's got a gun and I ain't? How can I not be hurt if, they don't think that like in the Matrix that bullets can be not dangerous to them. But if your thought creates reality, in reality, you should be able to stop the bullet. And the bullet does not exist anyway. It's only what you've created. It's only, I can't, even I'm losing myself. It's only a figment of your imagination in a funny kind of thing, because basically everything in this world is largely controlled by how we think about it. If you don't fear something, then it doesn't really exist in a funny kind of way. But anyway, I will just finish by saying what I was supposed to be saying at the start of the video, but I went around the world again. But because I don't think there's any point in me talking if I just say one thing, because it's about everything. It's a whole illusion of the whole world. It's an illusion about what I am, what you are, what the world is. It's everything the opposite to what we thought, and none of it is really real because it's all a blind to keep us in a box. This world is our box. We're confined in this world by our thinking. We don't think that we can do anything. We don't think we control anything. We don't think we can venture away from the world with our mind. We don't think that the beings that control it, they know all these things. And even though they're not spiritual beings, they understand all this. That's how they can control it and keep advanced beings into being very limited primitive beings. We were meant to be very advanced beings. We were almost chosen in a funny kind of way, I think. And that's how some humans see themselves anyway. They think they're special. The only thing is that they think they're special in a physical way, and they're buying into the physical, and they think that this world is just an earth and there's just only humans plonked on it. That's the problem. So they got the right idea in thinking they're special, but they think they're special for the wrong reasons. They think they're special because they've got nice hair and they've got certain abilities. They might sing or dance, or because they've got money, and all these things do make it more pleasant for them in this world. But that's all they think there is. And so they're still at a limited level, and eventually all that might even pass. Certainly the looks fade and all that sort of thing. And the money, well, that's another thing. The money rules this world, and the people who control it have all the money, so they have the technology, and therefore they have more knowledge. So they know that some of what I'm saying is true. They would believe some of it. They may or may dispute that they should be as advanced as what they are, because they would probably be ruled by the technological being that rules, and he probably would not want them to think that they have been limited. But he would give them maybe a lot more than what he gives you and me, so that they think that then they are advanced beings. And they're more advanced than you and I at the present time, because they've been given secrets and technology where they can do more than what we can. But even they would probably not realise that they're still at a limited level in comparison. God knows this. He knows that humans were meant to go higher. Because he knows, because if the history is correct, and I believe it probably would be, but either way he knows the abilities, because otherwise he wouldn't have consciously suppressed them. So that he could have us serving him, because we probably would not serve him so much if we advanced above him, shall we say, or had more abilities, because we probably then wouldn't see him as quite as much a god. Some people might still want to. I mean, we could have probably still been friends, but friends is not really his way of looking at things. He doesn't see human beings as his friend. He doesn't see human beings as one of his kind. He sees human beings the way we see, like the rat that I was talking about, right? He doesn't value us. He doesn't respect us, and he has no reason to now, because he's changed the genetics and changed most of us to where we are limited now. And so he's justified his negative thinking about us, that his race and his kind are the superior and we are the lesser ones. Because if you can make a bird, for instance, lose its ability to fly, then that bird looks pretty pathetical to you, and it has become pathetical. So then you're justified in saying that is an inferior species, even though the bird originally had the potential to fly and should have been able to fly. And we all know birds should fly and do fly, but that was how I see the human being. We were meant to fly, but instead we now don't fly. It's kind of like that anyway. It's hard to explain and hard to accept and comprehend, I suppose. But if you can be positive about it and say, hey, this is more than what I thought we were supposed to be, and more than what I thought I was, and we really are special, so therefore we should be trying to get that back, and raise the vibration, etc. Well, like I said, if you raise the idea is to keep those individuals who are on the verge of raising their vibration a bit. And from what I can gather, this is what I'm only gathering, I'm guessing, but what I do perceive to be true, I'm sorry to be so verbose, I've been told that I tend to use too many words to get to my point, and I think it's true, but I have to do this to get my own thinking clear, because I'm not clear on the thinking all the time, because there is the bombardment, and also there's not one word that can, in the English language, that I can use to always explain everything. I have to use a whole bunch of words to even get the idea, the what I'm trying to, say, sort of thing. But if I think that the vibration human beings must be capable of a lot, because my way of looking at it, from my own personal experience, was that some human beings, even if they raise their vibration just a little bit more than what would be regarded as relatively low, still have the potential to affect other human beings to raise the vibration higher. And this is kind of bizarre, because I think a lot of people, when they start to realise that they're being hit with negative energy, negative forces, shall we say, to keep the vibration low, I think some people that experience this, as some of us do, you start to say, hey, but I don't think I was ever going to be like one of your highly spiritual person that was dancing around in bliss and on top of the world. But yeah, maybe I was just about to get a little bit better. And then bang, you're brought back down again. So I think that human beings must have a little bit more potential than what they think, because they don't allow you to even rise the vibration even a wee bit sometimes. So heaven only knows the potential if we really rose it to a very high level, to the level and potential. That's why I surmise all this. Now, I don't surmise it, I believe it to be true. I think it to be true. I know it to be true in myself, but I don't always feel it and I don't experience it, but I still think it's a truth. And I wish I could experience it more. And sometimes I even wanting to prove it to myself more. But I proved it enough to myself, but not enough to where there's impact, or to where it affects anyone else, or to where I can make any change in my surroundings. And this is the unfortunate thing. It's like knowing a truth and yet not being able to materialize it, and to make it a reality, even though you know it's possible and it should be there. But it's like, how do you get the other, how do I get myself and the other beings, the other human beings that have this potential to raise the vibration and to change the reality, when all of us are bombarded with a negative reality? You know, we're all in that same boat. We're all suffering that, and we're all being controlled and mind directed and physically and mentally bombarded all the time. So even knowing it, it's like, oh, I know the frequency is bad through the air, but how do I get rid of the frequency? Because I can't convince my fellow human beings to get rid of the frequencies, because they want to keep using the technology, you see, because they think the technology is a good frequency and they think that it will be a good future for them. And either way, if they didn't dislike it, they're like, how can I do without it now? I need it to sustain my physical body. I need it for my survival, because it's become a necessary evil in this world. That's how I see it. A lot, you know, the old saying, a lot of things are necessary evils. That's because this world is a necessary evil. Everything that is in it is a necessary evil for humans. Nothing seems to be a necessary good for humans. That's the problem, because the God that rules is a different species and he doesn't see humans at the same level as himself. And he's managed to put humans down to the lowest level they can be. So then he's justified in thinking that it's actually become a reality, even though he knows that it wasn't meant to be at the beginning. But that doesn't matter. I mean, like, you know yourself, if you're a human being, right, think about this, you see this all the time, even in personal relationships. I've experienced it myself. You could be the smarter of the two in a relationship. A smarter, I'm sorry to use that word, I hate that word, smart. Don't like that word, it's used to promote technology everywhere. You only have to see that. Okay, you might be the more intellectual, I don't like that word either. You might be the more profound thinker, shall we say. You might see things the other person doesn't. You might actually have a better kind of mind and There again, I don't even like the mind word, because that's not spirit either. But even at a thinking level, you might still be able to perceive, because that's more the spirit, things that the other person does. And you might have many more abilities, but you could still be in a relationship where the lesser person, or the lesser human, in a way, that one that doesn't have all these abilities, is putting you down. Not big. Yeah, see, there again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that some humans are better than others, but I'm saying that in relationships you do get that. That person that puts the other person down, they think they're better than the person who actually probably has more things. And they know that. They know that that person has some abilities they don't. To be a bit like me, I want to be a dancer, right? But I'm clumsy. So I'm jealous of the person who is graceful and can dance. And so I'm so jealous that I put that person down and tell them they're a bad dancer, even though I know they have potential to be a really good dancer. And I also know they enjoy it. So I'm jealous. And I know they can do it easily. And I want to do it. I want to have that ability. And I can't help it. I'm jealous, so I put them down. And I'm in that relationship. Well, it's the same thing with the God entity. You know, that's how he looked at human beings. He could see they had potential. But he had the ability, as some humans do, to still control beings, other human beings that may have more ability than them. You see that all the time. You even see that high up, you know, like some of your entertainers. They might have the ability to sing and dance and do this and that, but they still have to do things to get their contracts. You're making a movie, you're a great actor, but you still have to be given that movie role, and you still have to, you know, get the parts. And how do you do that? You have to be friendly with people in the industry that may not have your talent, but they have the ability to control your talent and to give you fame and fortune or deprive you of it. So it's kind of like that, in a funny kind of way. I don't know whether I put that very well, but that's how the God is. He has the power, or we've given him the power, but maybe accidentally, maybe, you know, see, if you give a God power a long, long time ago, and, you know, maybe at that time it seemed more reasonable, because the God doesn't appear to us right now, does he? No. But back then, if he appeared out the sky and we were babies, yes, it impressed and we thought it was a god. But now, you know, even though we haven't really advanced and we have civilizations have gone and fell where the technology has been bigger than what it is now even. But even at our level as we are now, I'm not sure what we would think if that God actually appeared right now. And of course, the God would be different now anyway, because you're talking about 450,000 years further along the track. But so he could probably easily seduce and impress us again, because, well, of course he could now, because we're limited again now. But if some of us, like, if you're aware of this, some of us might question it, or want to know a bit more, or no, I think he would probably take over again anyway, because he's a master of deception. He would know what would appeal to people, what would get them in. No, so, but whether he could actually appear in his authentic form, and no, I think it would happen all over again. Yeah, I don't think that, you know, that there would be too many, and even if the few did see through it and didn't like it, that wouldn't matter, because the majority rules, as you know, and the majority is the thing. The majority is not always, the majority is what has to be directed, and this is why that business that I was saying before, where if some people can raise the vibration and pass it on to another being, usually, I think, and I'm not sure about this 100%, I'll have to say that. I'll have to look into it, but where I'm going to find the information, I don't know. Some of it comes to me, and I have to then use my intuition to say if it fits and if I think it's true. this is the problem. But I personally think that the people who are pushed down the most in this world, see, most people are controlled, right? We're all controlled. We're all not free. We're all part of the setup and the system and the game. We can't get out of it. But some people are a little bit different to others in the sense that they're not quite as much. They're a different. I'm too tired to really go into what really makes them a little bit different, but all human beings even are not all the same. They're like we have different, all human beings, even though we're different races, we all are really the same. We're all connected. But at a, oh, geez, I don't know how to explain this without putting it a wrong way. But I do think that what I am saying is, and if there's anyone listening, they might get this because they might be in this position. If the world is coming down really hard on you, right? I'm assuming that you're an individual that was going to raise the vibration a little bit. This is what I'm guessing. Because this is how it has to work, because this is how the God entity operates and has to keep the world at a low vibration. So naturally, any individual on any part of this planet, whoever or whatever they are, doesn't matter whether they're, right down the bottom or right at the top, if they're going to raise the vibration but not be serving the God, shall we say, or what suits his way of doing things, or the systems or whatever, then that individual will be kept down. And these individuals are the ones that are on the verge of raising the vibration a little bit. And they pass it on to another individual that has the potential to raise the vibration, shall we say. Now, I'm not sure 100% about this, but it could well be that some human beings are more receptive to this. Is that because their vibration is already just a little bit higher? Perhaps, probably. Now, there of course is the old thing that I've heard about recently, that if you can get a certain percentage of the population to think and go a certain way, then the rest will just follow, almost like a domino effect, which is strange to me because I've never been a domino type person so much. But this is actually a reality, and it's actually how humans are. I do it in some ways, but some people do it in everything. Most human beings seem to. This is what they tell me. And this seems to be how history is. In other words, if you can get a certain percentage of the population to think a certain way, the rest will just follow. Yes, okay, terrible thing to say, like sheep. I like sheep personally, so that is not offensive to me. But yes, in other words, they don't have to think for themselves. They'll just follow their friends, their neighbours, the society, the community they live in. That's how most people are. If the community, the society, their friends, their neighbours, their relatives tell them a certain thing, they think a certain way, they act a certain way, whatever rule they make, it will be acceptable to them. They'll go along with it. They'll go along with it. The majority go along with that. They don't, it doesn't matter even if they half might think, oh, maybe I wouldn't have, but they will just go along with the majority. And so this is how I guess it works, in the sense that if you have some human beings that raise the vibration and pass it to more, once you get a certain percentage, I've been told, say you've got 20% of the population that decides we've raised the vibration, we see through the rubbish that's around us, we see it's all false, we see it's fake, they show that to others, the others see it too, they go along with it. They're like, this has got to change. we're creating a new reality now. The rest will go along with it, even if they were thinking the other way before. In other words, they're like a swinging voter at an election where, you know, where they never really know what they're going to vote. They'll swing at the last minute according to this, that, or whatever, and the majority have that mindset, right? That seems to be the case. This is what I'm told, and this is what history shows, and this is how most people are. They go with the consensus. Just like if they're given information, most people believe most of the information they're given. They don't question it. They don't say, "Oh, that doesn't seem to fit my. I don't have a moral code of myself. I just believe the information." And they go with the moral code of the majority. They go with the consensus of the majority. It's a bit of a cycle. I can't explain it myself, but because, but that seems to be how it works. So this is why the God fears this, because he doesn't want the few that might raise the vibration, because the others will follow even if their vibration is not high. But theoretically speaking, if all human beings are connected. Now, this also would depend on the human being, I think. This is something that's coming to me right now, that there still could be different types of human beings. So, more artificial types of human beings, less feeling types of human beings, less intuitive like types of human beings, shall we say, less human types of human beings, less, I'm trying to find words, less spiritual beings. Because to me, a proper, original, authentic human being is just a spiritual being. This is what I now think. But we do have some humans that have verged very far away from the spiritual. And no doubt, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that perhaps human beings that are developed, created, and reproduced by any technological means, test tube baby type thing, that they are going to be further away from the spiritual and more synthetic. Dolly the sheep was cloned. She looked like a sheep. She was a sheep for all practical purposes, but she was a clone. This is the danger, I think, of the world we live in, is that we are not going to be able to distinguish between the synthetic, between the clone, between the artificial and the human. And there are differences. Now, humans are starting to think that the artificial is good and that it will benefit them and that it is natural and normal. Yes, I'm out on a limb if I say synthetic, test tube type, anything where there is too much technical, scientific even intervention. You won't see it because it will look the same as you and I, but it will be compromised, as we were compromised when we interacted, missing link, and bred and allowed ourselves to be genetically manipulated by the God entity a long, long, long time ago. All this sort of stuff, it's different. So there are humans even that are different, slightly different genetically, even on the planet now, because they have not been born naturally. Now it's something that not a lot of people might agree with or like to hear, and I don't like to think of it either, and I wouldn't have even thought it till now. But, you know, we are dealing with advanced technology here by the God that rules the world. Now, he knows these things, we don't. So we think, oh, it's fine. We don't realise we're compromising ourselves with all these things. And we might think it's necessary, because if we're told, hey, your baby won't be healthy if it's not, if technical intervention does not happen in some way, or if you don't do this or that. We have to believe these things because we have to believe our science and our medical information. And we've all done it. I'm saying that if everything is a construct, if everything is controlled by the God entity, it would be illogical almost to assume that he leaves some areas out, that everything is not under his dominion, because it is. So therefore something as important as genetics and breeding and the human being, and if you want human beings to be more with technology, it's only natural you're going to manipulate that at every angle and level you can think of. So even at a reproductive level, you are going to have slightly different humans being brought into existence because of it. And some of them are going to be more compromised than others. Just like some babies are born with different abilities and different defects and different this and that. This is all because of intervention and genetics and problems, and because of the system and the world we live in. Nothing is by accident. It's not a God like we think, but it is a God entity that has mastery over technology and over everything in this actual domain. It's, you know, so yes, so if you have some spiritual beings that are going to raise the vibration and pass it on to another spiritual being, to where you have a minority that can raise the vibration and show other beings, other human beings, even if they are not exactly the same as you, that can have a domino quite effect, I would think. And the only reason I assume this is because if the spiritual human beings that are about to raise their vibration, or have, they wouldn't be attacked so much if this wasn't possible, because otherwise they could probably just be left alone, because they would be insignificant and wouldn't have an effect. So therefore even the God entity would say, well, okay, we'll just let her live out her last few years doing whatever she wants anyway, because no one's going to take any notice either way. Even if she's a bit as happy as a lark, or even if she does, it's not going to matter. But it must matter, because otherwise you wouldn't get this bombardment, you see. And I don't fully understand it myself, because learning every day that even humans are different to what I thought, the world is totally different to what I thought, and that not, see, even some of the people I'm talking to are like myself. They would, well, that's if I'm talking to anyone, some of them would be the same as me. Now, others might not be. But I'm kind of guessing that probably because of the way things are. And this is the problem too, because the whole idea is to talk to everyone, really. But I'm not sure if it matters if you talk to all different types of humans, or if it's essential that you only talk to the same ones as yourself that have that potential to raise the vibration. I'm really not sure, because what I am saying is that, look, if a human being on this planet is totally taken over by the technology, by the God entity, by the world, by the physicality, and totally disconnected from other human beings, and they're totally serving, and they're very, they are just being fed information and then spouting it out, okay? So they are kind of, they're not thinking really for themselves, okay? That type of thing. Now, I don't know how much power the spiritual human being really has at this level, to where not everyone on the planet is going to be a spiritual human being who has the potential to raise the vibration, but also other human beings won't want to raise the vibration, you see. A spiritual human being wants to raise the vibration. They would desire to raise their own vibration. And therefore, in doing that, they will raise other spiritual human beings' vibration. Now, I may not be correct in assuming that everyone is a spiritual human being. Everyone looks like a human being. That I won't dispute. But I'm not sure that every human being on the planet is a spiritual human being. Certainly, if you look at a lot of the people who control the world, they certainly don't seem to be very spiritual at all. They do the good talk, and they have the emotions and all the appropriate gestures and stuff, better than me, no doubt. But whether their actual thinking is spiritual, or whether they're not just good actors, is another thing. Because we all know machines can mimic acting, machines can mimic emotions. In fact, machines can manipulate feelings, human feelings and emotions and things very well. That's what artificial intelligence really is. They don't have it themselves, but they can mimic it, and they can reproduce it, and they can effectively convince a genuine human being like myself that they are more human than me. This has happened to me. So, and it's probably happened to you too. So this is the deception of the world, and this is the problem, and knowing what the statistics really are, how many people are of this type or that. By type, I mean even a personality type. You know, if you're very psychopathic, you're going to be a totally different person to someone who is kind to things, aren't you? Because that person does not care for anything living much at all. And this is the same as the technical God that rules. He cares only mainly about his own domain, his own dominions, his own followers. And even that, I would not even know, even in that, how much it is more about serving him too. Because if you are a God and you think you're a God and you enjoy that, and you believe that, and you entertain that idea, and then you're also of the duality mind, where you're very split in your thinking, which the God is, because the God, some people have said that the God got into the duality mind and was infected with that kind of parasite of good, bad, right, wrong, and all this confusion and stuff. This happened at a physical level, a physical disease contamination level, you can even say, to the God. And this is why he rules this world in the way that he does. And this is why the world is so confusing and so chaotic and so artificial, because that's what happened to him. And he can't turn back. But he wants to have world, his worlds, and play in it. That's his entertainment. Perhaps I better close off here because I don't really like to talk about this too much, but it's his video game, it's his world, it's his virtual reality world, it's his holographic world, it's his fantasy world. It's ours too, but whether it's a good or a bad fantasy is for us to decide. Some of us don't even have a choice, because we should have more of a choice, at least to create a little bit more in it and to, yeah, or even to, as I've said before, if I think humans can raise their vibration, or some of us can raise the vibration, you could walk through a war zone and be impervious to it. But at the level that we are in a war zone, and we are certainly not impervious to it because we are at a low vibration. So we feel this war zone even more, particularly some of us, because spiritual beings are very sensitive. So they will feel everything much more than what they are supposed to even. So it's like if your eyesight is more sharp, if your hearing is more sensitive, you will hear noises bombarding you much louder. You will be blinded by the light, this sort of thing. So it's like that. And if you are sensitive to your surroundings, as spiritual beings are meant to be, but the surroundings should be pleasant, you see, because humans are meant to create in this world. So they should have surroundings that are pleasing to them, that help them and benefit them and make them freer and more, more everything that is meant to be developed should be developed. But instead, they're in surroundings that keep them down and make everything around them even more pronounced in a negative way as opposed to a positive way. And so the spirituality of the human being is now being used against the spiritual human being, in a way. You're actually better in this world at the present time if you have no spirituality at all. If you actually, think you are like a machine and that you are not a spirit, because the spiritual being is in an alien world and they will notice the lack of spirituality very much, and it will bring them further down. This is the idea. Whereas a machine will not be as affected. A machine-like being or a machine-like mindset, an artificial mindset, a cold mindset devoid of the emotions and of the, feelings, particularly for what other life forms and for others, provided that being is kept halfway comfortable, they won't care if they won't be sensitive enough to worry if there's bombs going off down the end of the street. They'll only worry about it if it's going to affect them. And this is the machine-like mentality of the more synthetic type of human being, the more artificial type of human being. And I think this happens because of the artificial breeding and stuff. I could be wrong, but this can make human beings different. And, we could well be, even by changing our way of doing things, the more we go away from what is natural and biological, we will change things. And we will get further away from our natural abilities and further into the control mechanism which rules this planet. And we will be even less individual, less free, less able to, essentially we'll end up dying because we will be so overtaken that there will be very little of what is human left, as I've said before. And once that happens, there is no human being. So it's no good saying, oh, well, yes, I've got a new body, but it will be a different species. It won't be you. This is the danger of what some people don't realise, because they think, oh, well, okay, we could create a new human being gradually. What's wrong with that? It might be better. They don't know that all they're doing is making themselves into a machine that is just a tentacle of the control technology system that rules this world. They won't be human, they won't be anything. They will just be a mechanical device that will be used for whatever ends the system or the God that rules the system that is this world wants. You know, is there something in a line from a movie where give me freedom or die? Well, basically that is an interesting choice, because really, if you don't choose freedom, you will die anyway. You know, you might not die instantly, and you might not think that you're going to be killed, because we're so conditioned into thinking that death is only where you are stabbed or where you have a heart attack and the body perishes. But in reality, if they take over your spirit, because we're really spiritual human beings, you no longer exist. And spiritual human beings are eternal. They're meant to go on and on. But they could literally kill a spiritual human being, which is almost impossible, or should be impossible. But, you know, if you're going to trap yourself and give over everything to the technology and to the mind machine that is technology, it's an artificially controlled supercomputer type thing. I say super because it's so much bigger and more vast and more expansive than what we can comprehend, because we only think of a little tabletop computer. But they're all connected. See, the computers are all connected. We know that. You know, it's a vast network of technology. It's a super mind. It's a super mind matrix that we are not meant to be in, and that we're now playing in, and we're connected to it. So that means that we're controlled. That means that we are not free. You know, we just be zombies. That's the truth. And I shouldn't say that word, I hate it. But it's true. It means that you're not thinking. You've given over your body, your mind, and your thing to this fake, artificial world. It's fake. It's not real. You have no participation in it. You've given over your human spiritual right to create and to live and to raise your vibration and to be free. You end up nothing. You know, that's how I feel. It's like we're already dead in this state. Once you feel that your freedom, just your very individual right to think and to be as you are, is taken from you, it's death to the spiritual human being. And it literally is. And, you know, we should never have let this, you know, it's bad enough that down through the centuries we've served the God and we've been manipulated. But at a physical level, like when you were a slave back in the old days, if you served the king and you were a slave and they beat you if you didn't do what you were told, you were a slave and you knew you were a slave. And you probably dreamed of being free. So you were still a spiritual human being. Now we are slaves and we think we're free and we're totally controlled by technology. And we are much bigger slaves than then. And some of us are being beaten anyway. Because if you're bombarded with things that injure your body, you are being beaten. You're being kept down. You're being destroyed. Okay, that's it. Good night. And if there's someone out there that feels like this, I can only say that I know that there are some people that can definitely get out of this. Whether those people can take others with them or change things to where there's more of a balance in this world, that I do not know. I think it's possible, but we're so separated, like I am now, so isolated and separated. This is the main problem. Because I really think that even a few can change things, provided we don't separate too much. But how do you connect, apart from through technology, which is the part of the evil, anti-live, because evil, as I say, is the opposite, back is live. It's anti-live world that we live in, anti-live for spiritual human beings. So we have to use things that we should be working against to even communicate, to connect to. It's quite insane, really. This is how the God genius entity that rules this, and that controls everything. Because it's easy to be a genius when you've been around a lot longer and when you've watched humans for thousands and thousands of years, and when they, on the other hand, live for only a limited time, remember nothing, don't know anything about anything. They could be the potential to be the geniuses, but they're never going to get there because they're in the dark and they can't get out of that dark. None of us can. I know some of these things, but I don't experience them. I can't tell you anything past my last 60 years, which have been all negative. So it's kind of pathetical. And this is how it works. And every time you get ahead of it, get a little bit in front, where you reverse something, then it will go back again. It'll always be one step forward, two steps backwards. But if we all could connect, even the few that know this and that have this bit of potential and realize it, because you do have to realize it and you have to really believe it, because if you don't, then you won't put it into operation. As I've said before, if you don't think you can do something but you really can, you won't ever try it and you won't know it. And most people just are limited because we believe everything we're told, as I did. And even now, and then if you do start to see some truth, then the forces will come down hard to make sure that you don't actually experience that, to where you can't even prove it to yourself. So it's very hard. It is almost like they used to say with religion, faith without a lot of proof. But actually, see, even faith is a spiritual type of thing, even though religion itself is all part of the God's system. But faith is really instinct, okay? And human beings have that. Faith is just getting that kind of vibe, yeah, because everything is frequency and vibration, and saying, I know that to be true. I can't prove it. I don't need to prove it because I know it. And if you did then act on it, you would prove it. But proving it to a lot of other people, each individual has to prove it for themselves. This is why I often say if only humans would start to, like I did, and yet I can't do much of it, but visualize things and see if they don't happen. Because then you might start to say, hey, yeah, human thought does have an impact on reality. You know, any human being can try this for themselves and see. And don't, dismiss it just because it doesn't happen straight away. Keep trying it. And, you know, but don't try too hard either. That's another thing, because I've noticed myself that if you try too hard, because see, there again, you must remember you don't have control over your subconscious. We only have our conscious mind. So even if you're trying to do this, you could have the parasites in your mind, in your subconscious, putting negative. So it's complicated. But I still say, even at that level, little things do happen. So it could show you that there's merit to it, that there's truth to it. That's really all I can say at the moment. Yeah, I'm sounding negative and losing heart myself. I better go because I don't want that to be the case. And that is just me. Not everyone is like that either. But you can't afford to get too enthralled with any of it in some ways. You can't afford to. It's all such an illusion that even the truth is presented in a way that, like you can have truth presented by people who are not truthful. You can have, misinformation presented by honest people. That's the world we live in. It's kind of it. So really, you have to discern and just take information on its own merit, not be influenced by the presentation. Don't be influenced by the messenger. Don't be influenced by this. Don't be. It's very hard. Don't assume that because someone is saying this sort of information that they really know more than you and that they have anything. They don't. It's just luck. And some of it is total fake and almost part of the world programs, you could say. In the sense that, the God controls, directs most things on the planet. So therefore, if you do receive even the truth, you have to be careful, because if they allow you to have the truth, that really means probably you will be then using the truth to follow part of the system. I think it's almost inescapable. This is the problem. So you do have to be careful. You do have to have your own, is the word integrity? I don't know what the word is. I find it hard, but you really have to be very careful, really. And you shouldn't have to be. As spiritual human beings, we should be free. We should be just creating. We should be just at a high level all the time. We shouldn't even have to be searching so much, I wouldn't think, because a lot of the answers would just be there. Like even in this world, like some people say, oh, well, we need to be searching for cures for this, and this is all because it's all part of the complicated problem, I think. I don't think there should be a lot of them. There shouldn't be all these problems, all these things. We shouldn't have to be searching for anything. We shouldn't have to be doing a lot of the stuff that we do. But maybe that's part of the whole. Maybe because I know that we're spiritual beings and we were meant to be a certain way. Maybe even I sometimes lose sight of the fact that maybe it's not maybe all meant to be roses. Maybe I think it should be. And so therefore I'm probably not seeing the value of all this devastation and all this negativity that's taking place. Because I can't see the whole picture either. I know that this is only a small part of the whole of what's going on. And I can't see a benefit to it. But, you know, maybe the God entity does serve some benefit in a way too, because it's allowed to exist, and yes, we are still making the choices. Spiritual beings really, I think spiritual beings really are tested very strongly. See, we think we're just living this random life. That's what I've always thought too. And that our decisions don't make a difference. Even our little choices don't matter. But maybe they do. And so it puts a burden on us. Like I feel very burdened now almost. But maybe, you know, if you just make the right decisions, then the burden is not as great. But the more you make the wrong decisions, eventually, by the end of your time, like myself, you're really burdened. You know, so, and I think that is because we are spiritual beings, because otherwise, why would that be so? You know, anyway. Anyway, I better leave now because I'm really quite exhausted, and I was trying to say, yeah, that if there's anyone that's in these sorts of situations, which I believe there are many people who are in a situation where the video game matrix fake world is really hassling them, to say the least, and that's to say the least. I don't like to use stronger words, but you know, if you think you're going insane, you're probably more sane than most people. That's probably what I would say, because it's the world that's insane, not most people. But a lot of people are being made to act insane, do things that they shouldn't do and that they wouldn't normally do if they were left alone and if they weren't bombarded by all the technology, all the fakeness, and all the wrong vibrational frequencies that are around them, which disrupt their natural thinking, their natural ability to know what is correct. You know? This is what I think. And, you know, I myself experienced this, to where I say, hey, the next day, why did I react that way? Why did I do this? And I know it was because I just could not cope with the bombardment. The matrix, the fake reality world that's controlled, got to me, even though I knew that I should have rose above it. And this is what happens. And if you're not aware of it, it happens even more, because you're not on guard for it. You don't actually stop and say, hey, that was a setup, that was fake. And yes, I should not take that personally, or this, because it's just all there to get me to be angry or negative. Yeah, so it's very difficult. It's a test, and it's a test that either only the very innocent or the very high vibrational, or at least, well, you know, at least, yeah, that are actually going to even survive or pass it, which is and And if you haven't thought you were a spiritual being, well, you probably wouldn't have even realised that you've been tested your whole life and been under this enormous scrutiny and and possession. Really, it's possession. A lot of people are actually possessed by the negativity and by the mind parasites that get to them, one way or another, whether it be from the entities themselves or via the technology, or even just by misinformation, or even just by letting their own emotions, which have been programmed into them. And I say programmed, by that I mean from the day you're born, if you feel that you need to prove something, you feel that others are better than you get a little bit of jealousy then, and you feel inferior. All this is put into you to keep you down so that you don't just relax and be yourself and say, hey, I'm okay. To where then you can just raise your vibration no matter whether you accomplish anything or not in this world. Because everything in this world is telling you that, oh, so-and-so is rich and famous, so-and-so is beautiful, so-and-so is this, and everything is like that, and it's all just to trick you into thinking that way, to where you waste your life and time trying to get things and prove this and prove that, and the God just laughs. He does, because he's like, I've got that one playing really well, and more so if you were meant to really just play it relax, shall we say, and just enjoy your little time, no matter what, and then your joy is taken from you by this insane way of thinking, I've got to prove this, I've got to do that, I've got to, and then the rest of you's even having to do it because of the set-up world where the Matrix makes it a necessity to have money to just survive at a very physical level. So it's like that. It's a mind game, and it's a physical game too now, and human beings are being hit at this present time with every single device that is available to the God, mental, physical, spiritual, everything, to keep the human beings from realizing how false the world is, because there are a lot of human beings. When I say a lot, not a lot by the general population, no, but still a lot of numbers. Considering that practically no one saw this much in the past, I don't think. I mean, there probably were some that saw it at the past at different times, groups. Some, there again, I don't mean to be, because I'm not sure about that. There probably would have been. But in the recent past, I would say that most of us have been quite ignorant, really. We might have had the right ideas at times, and we might have seen that some things were bad and tried to fix them, but we didn't see the whole concept, I don't think. And even at the whole concept level, like the people who believe, for instance, which I've looked at, that believe that aliens did come here, interdimensional beings did come thousands and thousands of years ago, and, interact with the humans and this and that. Some of those people still believe that those beings were beneficial to the human, and that they are the creators and gods of the human. They are. We are the result, most of us, of interaction with that God, and of genetic engineering, shall we say. That's the word, I think. Breeding with them even. I believe, this is what I've been told. But was that for the advancement and the benefit of the spiritual being, or was it to make the human being more like them and more to to their service and their way of looking at things and their world, the world they wanted? Did we advance spiritually? have we got many abilities, or are we more dependent just on the actual matrix fake world? You know, are we independent, or are we dependent on the matrix fake world? We're hooked up to it. Are we dependent on it? So therefore, are we trapped by it? Okay.